Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar, brought to you by TechStrong and Everbridge. My name is Cody J. Brown. I'm the host of TechStrong Learning. We have an exciting presentation ahead, but first, we have a couple of housekeeping notes. First, today's session is being recorded, so if you miss any of our discussion or you'd like to share it with a friend, the on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude the webinar today. If you have any questions for our speakers today, we want you to direct those to the Q&A tab, which can be found on the right side of the screen. And if you have any comments to further our conversation, or you just want to let us know where you're tuning in, we want you to go ahead and use the chat tab for those kind of comments. Also, the slides for today's presentation are available for download in the Handouts tab. And at the conclusion of our webinar, we will have a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So on to our topic at hand. We'll be discussing improving pipeline efficiency with enhanced notifications and response automation. And I'm joined today by Eric Maxwell, Solution Architect on the xMatters platform for Everbridge. And Eric, it's my pleasure to turn the floor over to you. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thanks, Cody. All right, thanks, everyone. As Cody was saying, today we're going to talk about improving pipeline efficiency with enhanced notifications and response automation. And I know that's a mouthful, and we'll get into more detail. But before I do that, just introduce myself, Eric Maxwell. I'm a solutions architect with Everbridge, but for the xMatters digital operations platform. I've been with xMatters and Everbridge for just over 2 years. And previously, I spent approximately 10 years in development as a product manager, an architect, and an SRE manager. I've worked on projects that range from cloud migrations to microservice and container implementations. All right, so for the topic today, we'll start out talking about innovation, right? That's what we're all trying to do, innovate, and we want to innovate faster, improving our products and services, and introducing disruptive technologies. I'm sure most of you probably experienced this, that the faster we move, the faster we run into issues, right? It's inevitable that that's going to happen. And how do we deal with that? How do we balance between this innovating and dealing with issues? But today I'm not going to focus on production issues. I want to focus more on shifting that over to how do we handle this, and how in our non-production development processes, and how does that affect our production environments? But first, let's just talk about why do we focus on production? In my past, working with customers and prospects, this is still this is where customers typically focus when they're trying to improve efficiencies in issue resolution. And there's reasons for that, right? It's obvious. One, impacts customers directly. So we want our customers to be happy. And so issues in production impact them in a noticeable way, right? Immediately. It brings high visibility because of this, not just with the customer, but within our organization, right? So we don't want to be the one that's always has the issues, right? And then immediate losses, of course, those are in production. It's typically easier to calculate those things, revenue losses, and even penalties that we can occur because of downtime and things like that, right? So that's obviously why we focus on production. But what about that indirect things that can affect our production environments? So today I want to talk about pipeline issues and efficiency. So these are our CI/CD development pipelines, things like that, right? How does that affect production? Well, one is customer value, right? We're talking about bringing innovating and disruptive technologies. We want to bring a value to our customers. And if our development processes and engineering processes are affected, they're unstable, or we're dealing with issues in an inefficient way, or not even just issues, but just processes in general, they're not efficient in an efficient way, our customers are not going to see that value coming to them in a steady pace and quickly, right? Which we want to do, and they'll start to lose interest in our solutions and products. Management confidence. If we're having issues with bringing this value out, our management within our organization is to start losing confidence in the team that we can provide value in a timely manner. And then, of course, the team confidence in general and the transparency. We want our teams to be confident in when they commit to things, and that they're transparent about things that are happening and issues that they may run into, right? And if they're dealing with inefficiencies and issues in their processes, or just inefficiencies in general, they're going to lose that confidence because they don't know. They may make a commitment that things that they realize that they're going to deal with these inefficiencies and issues affecting their time and ability to bring out this value in a timely manner. And that, of course, affects the developers and engineers, our individual contributors, their morale, right? If they're not able to do their job and produce value and see that they're producing value for the company and the organization and the customers, they start to lose productivity, and it starts to cause things like turnover, which costs the organization money as well and can affect our production and our value to our customers. So how does this kind of tie together, this foundation, right? So we have, we're talking about major production incidents, right? So those are right at the top. They're easily seen right at the surface. They get lots of focus. Other production incidents that maybe aren't so major, but they still get lots of visibility. Major bugs that maybe affect functionality in some way that don't have a workaround, right? Of course, those get lots of focus. And then we want to build, but then here comes our new features and maybe some minor bug fixes that we want that cause minor issues with our customer, functionality for our customers that they can work around, but it just causes pain points for them, right? But we want to provide those new features and value to them. But then below this kind of foundation to all of those things is our pipeline, right? And any issues or how efficient it is affects how we can provide those top layers and how we can provide the services and responses we need to those layers above, right? So there's that foundation. So we're all familiar, I'm sure, with this diagram showing kind of our software development life cycle. And if we look at this and we see where we are focused on, where we're talking about focused on those production issues and mitigation resolution, it's a very small part of this whole process, right? It's right in here, and we could get this super efficient, right? We could deal with these issues here super efficiently, but the problem is we have this whole process that if there's any efficiency issues that we're dealing with, we're not dealing with. It's a very small portion of the entire process, right? And those things can affect, like we were showing you, a foundation. If we're dealing with this efficiency, we can make the process of how we handle it very, very, very efficient. But the problem is what if we need a fix that needs to be coded and deployed to resolve the issue? It has to go through this whole process, which, okay, well, we made this very efficient and fast, but our fix takes a while to come through, right? So what if we can improve this efficiency, right? And today I'm not focusing on the tools that are necessarily used in your CI/CD processes, those types of tools. We may integrate with those tools to get information and things, but we're not going to focus on those tools. We're focusing more on, let's say, the typically around where human interaction is required. And those can vary from organization to organization. We'll get into that in just a moment. So, what are some of these key improvements that we can make? Right? One is if there's an issue or a decision that needs to be made, like a person needs to be involved, we need to involve the right people. Right? We don't want to, if we involve a group of people and only 5 of them are capable, or a small number of them are capable of actually responding or making that decision, we're providing noise. So that anyone that receives those, gets notified or whatever we're doing, that they will have to read through it, right, to determine, are they the ones that are responsible for this? And people will start to get numb to those notifications, and responsiveness starts to drop, right? And then that ties into also driving ownership. If I'm notifying a large group of people, maybe five people can resolve it. But if I notify those 5 people, we're all busy, right? So if I get a notification and there's 4 other people on it, and I'm like, well, I'm busy working on this other thing, so Bob will take care of it, or someone else will take care of it, right? But everyone else is thinking the same thing, right? So it drives down that responsiveness to what we're working on. Providing context, right? So we need to provide. So we're focused here on getting the right people involved and driving that ownership, but then also providing them with the information that they need. So if we can provide them context around the issue or the action that we're asking them to take, right? Giving them detail in a concise way, making it easy for them to access more detail quickly, right, as they need it. And then, of course, we want to keep stakeholders informed, right? This is not necessarily, we're talking about non-production, so it's not maybe customers, but we're talking about internal teams. It may be our development team in general. It may be other development and engineering groups within the organization. If they're dependent on the service that we work on and that our development process is having an issue, or they need to know what's going on, making it easy for them to see what's going on. And then, of course, we want to automate this. And we're not talking about, again, like I said, I'm not talking about CI/CD orchestration, this development build and deploy, or build and deploy processes. I'm talking about these operational processes that kind of flow in parallel to this, especially around human interaction. So let's look at a few examples of what I'm talking about. So I've generalized that process here, kind of flattened it out, generalize it a little bit, summarize. So first off, some examples: build failures, test failures. So we get notifications, and I'll say typically what I see is that, you'll get an email or something, right? But how do we make these more efficient? And one is if one of these things fail, do we necessarily need to fail the pipeline in general? And I'll go through that in a minute in the demo about how, there are situations where maybe you don't necessarily need to fail your pipeline and then have to start all over again just because of a specific failure. So we'll see that in a moment. But how do we bring these efficiencies here? And of course, then there's other human interactions that happen, right? So human decisions, we might need to make a decision we need a human to make a decision in our pipeline for some reason, or approvals depending on policies and regulations that the organization has to follow. Right? So, the common practices that I see working with customers and prospects, the tools vary. So, keep this in mind. I know people use different tools and they have varying capabilities, but in general, lots of time, what we see is, there's an issue or a notification that goes out, right? And that's typically sent through email. And that email is usually sent to some distribution list that contains a large group of people. It varies based on organization size, things like that. But it's not very, but it targets a group of people, kind of a broadcast. And the same thing with, they may also use chat. That's another common thing. But again, they're just posting information into a channel, hoping someone's going to see it, right? The issues with this are, one, as mentioning, as I've said so far, right? It's not targeted. If you're notifying a group of people, it's not targeted, right? So maybe it is a build issue and I'm targeting the development team, but it's still not targeted. Like who? Let's target someone so they have ownership, right? If you look at this as of taking some of these practices and things we've learned in production and moving those into our non-production environments. And also think of it outside of just our pipeline, but also infrastructure. So our non-production infrastructure as well, right? If there's issues with our non-production infrastructure, that's going to affect our development processes, because we may not do things like being able to run integration tests and deploy it, and run these tests and things that we need to do before those changes go into production. But taking ownership, right? So it's not targeted, taking ownership. So again, as I was saying, taking ownership of that action that needs to be taken. So who is the owner? If we're targeting a group, who's the owner? We don't know. Limited context. So lots of times these notifications come out. It's limited in context to whatever tool sent the notification and what that tool knows, right? How do we get more? We want to get more context to provide around that. And of course, keeping stakeholders involved. Lots of times it's either they're included in the notification, and so they have to determine if it's important to them or not, or someone that got notified then has to notify the stakeholders, right? So you get these layers of things, and sometimes they don't happen, and if they do, sometimes they take a while, right? So how do we keep people informed with less effort? And then, of course, automating this process. So how do we do that? Key improvement. So one, target specific groups and users. So when we say target a group or a user, when we target a group, we're not necessarily going to notify everyone in that group. Someone needs to be the primary so that they know if they get targeted, that they are the person that needs to take care of it, right? And then they can, from there, they can decide on, do they need to get others involved, right? So it increases that responsiveness, right? Tracking progress. So this is tracking progress of what's happening, right? Tracking metrics around our responses and things like that. But it's not, think of it as when you're building an application and you're testing and you're running in production, you have your SLOs and SLIs that you're trying to, that you want to meet, right? So it's the same type of thing. If we're not keeping track of our progress on these types of processes and actions, how do we know if and how to improve, right? Or where to even improve? But pulling these together, this helps with our ownership and responsibility, right? So this helps us drive those things. And then in providing that context again, keeping stakeholders informed, and of course, automating this as much as possible. So I'm going to go into a demo. It's going to be kind of some basic scenarios just to show how we can improve some of these touch points, right? So before I do that, the scenarios I have 3 cases. I'm going to have a test failure in my pipeline. And also in my case, I require that I have several test environments, and I need someone from my QA and team, whenever a release goes in for integration testing, that they decide which environment that they need it to go into. We have a large data application, and they're maybe running performance tests and things that take a while, or as much as we want to automate testing, there's still some manual testing that needs to be done. And so we let them choose which environment they need it to go into. And then deployment approval. So we have to follow some policies and regulations. So we need to get approval from the team. So it's not necessarily we're going to have a meeting about it, but we need to have some formal way to take approvals and document that. And the tools I'm using for the demo will be Jenkins for pipeline orchestration, GitHub for source control, Jira for my issue tracking. I'm going to use Slack for chat ops. And then I'm using the Everbridge xMatters platform to orchestrate these operational processes. So the notifications and things and the integrations between that are going to be handled by the xMatters platform. All right, so let me jump. All right, so we'll see here, I've got the Jenkins console open. We see that we have a build that has started, and it has gotten to our test phase, and it was running some unit tests, and we have run into some issues. And we can see here in Slack, I have the CI/CD runs channel that I've that I'm posting into, and I'm posting my pipeline runs into this channel. So anyone that's interested in or needs to know what's going on, they can come check this out. So I have this new run that started. And if I look at it, we can see we posted some information here. So xMatters did that for us about the build information. So it got information from Jenkins and also queried GitHub to get this information. So we're giving context here for our kind of our stakeholders in this case. And then we're letting them know, hey, this run has run into a unit test failure, but we've gone ahead and created our Jira issue. I'll go ahead and open that. And it's also showing us what test failed, right? So we can see that. All right, but we're not actually, so this is just to keep others informed. So if we look over here on my phone, I've got a message here about build 74, the unit test failures. And we can see that, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, that we have the information about the build. We can see here the context. So again, targeting the right people. So we targeted, so Dev Team 3 is responsible for this one, and I'm on Dev Team 3, so that's why it notified me. But I'm currently the person that's the primary on this team. So we didn't notify the entire dev team. It notified me. So I know that I got notified, so I'm the person that needs to respond. Now, we can have policies that if I don't respond in a certain amount of time, just like in production, we can escalate, right? But I got notified, I should respond to this, right? There's the Jira issue. I can go into that as well. The test that failed, and then we have some other information around the build. So I could actually link into the tests, the changes and artifacts within Jenkins there. And then of course the commit information from GitHub. All right, so actually before I do that, I have some responses, but I wanted to show you the incident or the issue that was created. So we can see that our issue here with the details from the failure, and then some of that context that we gathered. And then we notice that xMatters is going in and let us know that, hey, I'm notifying people about this issue. And we can see even the device that it has notified me on and the status of that. So there's other information you can put here, but basic example, right? So now let me go back to my notification. And you'll see that I have a couple of responses. I have continue pipeline and stop pipeline. So you'll see that my pipeline hasn't actually stopped. You know, typically if I had a fail like this, maybe the pipeline would just fail and I'd get a notification, and then I would have to go see what the problem was, and then maybe have to go do the fix or restart it, right? In this case, I have my information, and I can look at, I actually have the unit test that failed. And so maybe in this case, I'm working on a bug that needs to get, I need to push an update out to production to fix an issue. And so I need to continue. And I've noticed that, okay, well, you know what? I fixed the issue, and now this value has changed, and I forgot to update the unit test. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and continue the pipeline. All right. So let's see. The value is correct, and the test case needs to be updated. Updated, right? All right, so now what we've just done is xMatters. So I've just responded. This is going to xMatters, and so I didn't point this out. And I'm using the xMatters app in the demo. It's a push notification, but it could be email, it could be text message, it could be a voice alert if you really wanted to, and we could also push it to Slack as a direct message to you, things like that as well. So I responded. And that has kicked off xMatters to go and let Jenkins know, yep, we want to continue the pipeline. So that should continue. And just there it goes, it continued. But we can see here that we posted information in here that there is my comment that I made about the value being correct, and that I told it to continue anyways. The build completed, and now our release has started, right? So we've started that release, and we can see the services and things that are involved, service versions that are involved. But it's letting me know, okay, well, the release is ready for testing, but we need to know which environment it needs to go to. Actually, I wanted to show here, I also updated the Jira when we continued build pipeline with that information. So we have it when we need to go back to fix that test case. That issue is there for us to do that, right? All right, so our release has started, and it's at this point where it needs to know which environment we want it to load that information. So you'll see that I have received another notification. I'm playing several roles here, but you'll see that now it has targeted the QA team, letting them know, hey, we've got this new release and we need to know which, it needs to know which environment to load it into. So I've got several responses here, which are my environments. So I'm just going to pick one. I'm going to pick Delta. And so we now just told it, hey, we want to load this into the Delta environment. So now we're going to let Jenkins know, hey, go ahead and load this into that environment and start our automated test, our integration test for this environment. And so this will continue on. Right, so there it goes. It's deploying. We can see here where I've responded. We're keeping people up to date on what I did. So now we know that, okay, well, it's running the test in the Delta environment, right? So once that's complete, should take a second, and it'll complete, and we'll move on to our deployment phase. So it's completed. So our deployment phase will start in just a moment. There it goes. And we'll see we've got several stages here, but one of those is taking an approval, right? So like I was saying, my organization has some policies and regulations we have to follow. And one of those is documenting. We have to document approvals before they go out to production. And so we're not having a meeting. We're just taking those approvals. And if we look here, we can see where the deployment, we're letting everyone know the deployment started and some information about it. We can link to it, the release that it's going out. It's letting us know that approval is required. And we can see that product management has already approved it. So let me refresh, you can see that. So product management already approved it. It's waiting on engineering approval. So if we look, I've gotten another notification. We're providing some information here, right? Again, we've got the approval, the release, built deploy release number, but you'll see here, context again, I'm being notified because I'm on the engineering team. And currently I'm the person responsible for making this decision. Again, and I've got some change information here. So I can approve it or I can decline it. I'm going to approve it for the sake of the demo. And I can put in a comment. And now we've just approved this, and our release or our deployment will continue, and we have taken those approvals. So we can see in Slack that we'll see where I've approved it, and the deployment process will continue. So there we go. There's my approval and my comment, and then we should continue on here. Yeah, there we go. So now it's deploying. And we're all good to go. So I had several stages there, right? So several things. One was I had a unit test failure. In this case, it could have been some other type, but I'm trying to push out a change and I forgot to update a unit test, but we're trying to resolve an issue in production. So we don't necessarily want to stop the pipeline. I see that, okay, well, the test values are actually correct. So we continued it on, right? We didn't stop it. And as a user or as a member of the team receiving this notification, I did not have to go to Jenkins or my other tools to do that. I just responded from that notification. I had that information there that I needed. And then as it moved on, we needed to make a decision on which test environment to run it in. So the QA team was notified, and a specific team member was targeted to make that decision. If they didn't respond, we can always escalate. But there was a specific person that was targeted, and they know if I'm targeted, I need to make a decision and respond. And then the same thing with and then taking our approvals, right? We make it very easy for them to do that. They don't have to go into another tool, log into another tool to do that. They can do it directly from their notifications and things. Make it very easy. We provided in all of those, we provided some context to them to help them make their decision. And that context, that information you can always customize that depending on the tools and things that you're using, right? All right, so back here. So our test cases, as I just went through, the tools that we were integrating with, I was orchestrating with the xMatters, the Everbridge xMatters platform, those processes. But of course, the key things we were trying to improve, right, involving the right people. So we were targeting specific groups, but then within those groups, we were targeting specific people, so that they know that, one, where they're the owner, they're the one that's responsible for taking action. And then we were providing them with context, so that they could easily make a decision, maybe even from that information, or at least easily access the information that they need to review and make their decision. And of course, then keeping others up to date on what's going on, where we are, if there's any issues, and how, what actions were taken. And of course, we automated those things. And again, not our CI/CD orchestration, but outside our operational orchestration. All right. So I just want to switch over here and see if anyone has any questions. Of course, as we said, if you have questions, put them into the Q&A section over on the right. All right, so we'll look through here. But as far as the integration and orchestration, again, the examples I give are just that I give in the demo are just kind of basic ones, for the sake of the demo. And then, but it varies from tool to tool that you're using, the type of information that is provided by that tool, the capabilities of that tool, but I've integrated with several, I've done integrations with several different similar tools. I've used Jenkins, but I've used things like Azure DevOps or GitLab pipelines or GitHub pipelines and things like that, right? But then they provide various different functionalities, right? Well, I don't have any questions coming in, so I will just want to thank everyone for joining. If you want to test out the xMatters platform, you can always go test that out for free. So just go to our website, check that out. So you can get to that from Everbridge or xMatters.com. And then also, if you want to check out any other demos around our features and other integrations and things with our partner solutions, you can go to our YouTube channels, Everbridge YouTube and the xMatters YouTube channels, and check those out as well. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for your time.
Excellent. So thank you so much, Eric. I will give the audience about 1 more minute to send in any questions while I just go through a couple more reminders. But today's session was recorded. So if you missed any of the webinar, you'll receive access to the on-demand recording shortly after the webinar concludes. Or you can find it living on the DevOps.com website. Just visit DevOps.com/webinars. It should be there in about 24 hours. So quickly, we'll announce the 4 winners of our Amazon gift card drawing. Our first winner is Anthony A. Our second winner is James F. Our third winner is Tina M. And our fourth winner is Nikhil K. So congratulations. Keep an eye on your inbox to claim that gift card. And if you don't see that email, just check your spam folder. So checking through one more time, and I'm seeing we have no more questions. So Eric, thank you so much for being here with us, for putting together a demo and sharing your expertise. I'd also like to thank Everbridge for sponsoring today's webinar. And my final thanks goes to you, our audience. We appreciate you being here today for this Everbridge webinar. Please take a moment to fill out our post-webinar survey, and we hope to see you at a future Tech Strong Learning webinar.